What's up, you guys? My name is Aubrey, this is my channel, and in today's video, I'm going to be breaking down my thoughts on Turo going into 2022. In this video, I'm going to be breaking down whether or not I think that this is a side hustle worth pursuing in 2022. I'm going to be talking about some of the things to keep in mind and some of the things to avoid as well. So let's get started. Yesterday was Halloween, which is always a great day of the year. I hope that you guys had a safe and enjoyable holiday. But today is November 1st, which means I had to break out my very first Christmas sweater of the season. Fall and winter is my favorite time of the year, but November and December is just like next level peak Aubrey. I love this time of the year. It makes me so happy, and this will not be the last holiday sweater that you guys see this season. And no, I don't want to hear about how November 1st is too early to be celebrating Christmas, because it's never too early. Now, what I want to talk about in this video is I want to break down my thoughts on Turo going into 2022. Now, I made a very similar video to this last year in 2020, talking about my thoughts on Turo going into 2021. And I think that right now is the perfect time to make the same style video going into 2022. Now, before we dig into my exact thoughts on Turo, if you guys could do me a huge favor, and if you could hit the like button and hit the notification bell for the YouTube algorithm, I would greatly appreciate it. This helps my channel grow because it helps let YouTube know that you guys are enjoying my content, thus pushing out my videos to a new audience. So if you guys could do that, I would greatly appreciate it. Now, over the years, Turo has changed quite a lot. Their policies have shifted, the rules have shifted, and some of these have been good for hosts, but some of them have been bad. It wasn't that long ago that Turo allowed for hosts to charge $50 per hour late fees, in some cases charging hundreds of dollars for a vehicle that was a couple of hours late. Other times, hosts would charge $3 per mile for every mile driven above the allotted mileage allowance given to the guest by the host. Now, these were policies that, in my opinion, were borderline predatory, and I think that it was good for Turo to get rid of those policies that really took advantage of guests that may be new to Turo. So while these policy changes absolutely have affected the host pocket, I don't really blame Turo for doing them. On the other hand, there has been other policy changes that have been really debated on in the Turo host community, things like implementing a deductible, taking away the cleaning fee, and so much more. There has been a lot of controversial policy changes over the years that have truly shifted the Turo landscape. But on the other hand, there's been some really positive changes as well. There's been things like convenience fees. There's been things like tools for hosts to use to more efficiently run their fleet. There has been a combination of both good and bad policy changes over the years. What is safe to say, though, is that Turo back in 2017, whenever I joined the platform, is completely different than what it looks like today in November of 2021. But that begs the question of, what does Turo look like for 2022, and what are some of the things that we can expect to be implemented in the coming months and in the next year? Now, the first thing that I think is extremely important to be aware of, and this is kind of a prediction on my end, is the fact that I believe that Turo is really going to double down on their good hosts, and I think that they are going to actively try to ban their bad hosts. We are already beginning to see this with the newest Turo policy that they just implemented, which is vehicle inspection reports. You see, Turo has never required a vehicle inspection to be submitted to Turo before a car can be listed on the Turo platform. But just recently, in the last few weeks, Turo has changed this policy, and now they will require hosts to submit a yearly inspection for all of their vehicles. If a host does not submit an inspection, or if the inspection fails, then that host will get that vehicle taken off of the Turo platform, either temporarily or permanently. Now, this is something that I've heard mixed feelings about online, but to be honest, I think that this is a good change, and I think that this is a change that will really put an emphasis on those good hosts versus the bad hosts that have no business being on the Turo platform. The fact is that vehicles that aren't well maintained are flat out dangerous, and not only is dangerous, but it also makes Turo and other Turo hosts look bad. So by Turo now requiring for hosts to get a yearly inspection, that will allow for those good hosts to thrive and those bad hosts to slowly weed themselves off of the platform. Now, one thing to keep an eye out for in 2022, at least in regards to these inspection reports, is to be aware of the fact that these are going to be required, and you should logistically plan for how you want to go about doing this. Now, for all of the vehicles that are currently listed on Turo, they have until December 31st, 2020 in order to get inspected. And then after that, they will need to be inspected on a yearly basis. How HP and I are tackling this is we are trying to get a vehicle inspected about once every few days between now and the end of the year. That way we can make sure to have all of our cars inspected way before December 31st comes rolling around. Then whenever December 31st, 2021 comes rolling around, we will then begin doing our inspections every time the Texas registration is due, because at that point the car will need to be inspected per the state of Texas's guidelines, and we will then simply do a Turo inspection at the same time. This will allow for us to very easily do Turo inspection reports because it's killing two birds with one stone, and it will allow for us to be able to plan logistically when these need to be done. Now, the inspection reports is just a small piece of the puzzle, and it certainly isn't the only thing to keep in mind going into 2022. The next thing to keep in mind is vehicle year model requirements. As we sit here today in November of 2021, the oldest model car that you can list on the Turo platform is a 2009. But once New Year's comes around and we hit the clock at 12 o'clock a.m. on January 1st, that requirement will change to a 2010. Now, the thing is that if you're somebody that already has a 2009 model listed on Turo, you can keep that car as long as it's well maintained. But if you're somebody that's wanting to list a new car, a 2009 will no longer make the cut and it will have to be a 2010 or newer. This is again a small change that is very easy to accommodate to, but if you're somebody that's wanting to buy a 2009, make sure to do that within the next 2 months. Now, these are just two policy changes that I think are particularly important to keep in mind going into the new year. But the thing about Turo is that policy changes can come really at any time. They change their policies every few months based off of the environment, based off of host feedback, based off of their own profit margin. And I think that it's important to keep that in mind because what is going on today in November may not be what goes on in spring of 2022. Things change, and being able to be flexible with these changes is going to be crucial with your success on Turo. The next thing that I think is incredibly important to talk about is the impending Turo IPO. Now, that is the initial public offering that will most likely be coming at some point in 2022. Turo has already announced that they would be filing for an IPO and they would officially become a publicly traded company. Now, from a host perspective, especially a host that is particularly bullish about Turo, I'm pretty excited about this. I think that this is a really great opportunity for investors, and I am personally hoping that Turo allows access to pre-IPO shares for their Turo hosts. But ultimately, time will tell in regard to that. But the real question in regards to the IPO isn't in relation to stock price or pre-IPO pricing. It is instead related to how will the IPO affect Turo as a whole, like the quality of service, the quality of host support, and those types of crucial tools that anybody who runs a business on Turo needs. Now, the unfortunate reality is that if we look at similar companies like Airbnb or Uber, you will see that more often than not, these companies and the customer experience of these companies ended up going downhill since the company went public. For example, I've heard from a lot of Airbnb hosts that once Airbnb went public, Airbnb became harder and harder to make money on, mainly due to the fact that Airbnb charges an exorbitant amount in fees, which makes Airbnb no longer the most cost-effective choice for guests. As far as Uber goes, I've heard that ever since Uber went public, they simply do not offer the same incentives for drivers like they once did. Now, I would be lying if I said that I wasn't a little bit worried about how an IPO will affect the host. Not only the host experience, but also the host utilization and also the host profit as well. But ultimately, time will tell, and I don't think there's any use to stressing out about something that is 100% out of my control. The only silver lining here is that Turo really doesn't do a ton for their hosts anyways. They don't really offer any host incentives. They run their ship really tightly as things stand today. And so I don't see things getting worse because of an IPO. If anything, I think things will just remain the same. But ultimately, time will tell. I do think the IPO, though, is something to keep an eye on. Ultimately, the question of this video is, do I think Turo is a safe bet in 2022 as a side hustle? And do I think it's worth pursuing into the new year? And the answer to both of those questions is a resounding yes. Now, the thing that's interesting is back in 2020, I was very bearish on Turo. In fact, I said in a video on this channel that I was questioning my own future on Turo because of their response to COVID-19 and the pandemic. But over the last 12 months, I think that they've really taken a 180. They realize that they can't treat their hosts like absolute garbage and expect for them to stay. And as a result, they've kind of laxed on some of their policies. And I think that Turo is really as good as it's ever been. They've been amping up their marketing. There are more hosts on the platform, but there's also more guests as well. Overall, I am extremely bullish on Turo moving forward. And I'm not only recommending you guys to look into this as a side hustle, I myself am doubling down on it as well. And I'll be expanding my Turo fleet quite substantially in the new year. Ultimately, when it comes to Turo, I think that 2022 is a great time to start Turo. And if you're somebody that is curious about the platform and you're interested in giving it a try, I highly encourage you to do so. It can be semi-passive, it can be a big moneymaker, and if you're somebody that is a car enthusiast or you're good at working on cars, I think that it is the ultimate side hustle. It is the ultimate semi-passive income stream. Like always, you guys, I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, comments, if you have anything to add, make sure to leave a comment down below. And while you guys are at it, make sure to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit the notification bell. And I will see you guys in the next video.